Hi guys, sorry for the tech issues. Third time's a charm. It's just waiting for Project Kale to join and then we'll continue our conversation. Thanks for your patience. Hi, Anna.
So sorry.
No, I don't know what the issue is. And sorry to everybody who's joined and, has randomly had to see our frozen faces. But maybe we can just take it from the beginning of what you were saying earlier, Angana, specifically with regards to why um, the approach of using play when working with young kids, how it's different from other programs or other approaches, and why that difference matters.
Uh, so I think amongst the few other formats that exist in engaging with children, a lot of it is to do with classrooms and rules and boundaries. And when you talk about games, yes, there are rules, but the beautiful thing about games is that every day you can change the rules of the game. So even if you're playing the same game with the same set of friends, you guys decide. Like we decide, आज ये follow करेंगे, कल हम कुछ और करेंगे. So that way, the flexibility of the word itself, the appeal of the word itself, is a lot more exciting. And also, what I had started talking about before the screens froze was how the amount of ungendering required for the word play and the associations that we have with the word play is much less, because it is a word that sounds familiar to all genders. हर किसी ने बचपन में कुछ ना कुछ तो खेला होगा. इफ नथिंग एल्स टिक टैक टो खेला है, घर घर खेला होगा, पकड़म पकड़ाई खेला होगा, हाइड एंड सीक, फुटबॉल, क्रिकेट. The beauty of this is that tic-tac-toe is as much a game as much as a football is. So that way, everyone feels like play belongs to them, that there is something here for them. And also, I think organizationally, when we shifted ourselves from being a sports for development organization to a play for child development organization, we saw a massive change in what our curriculum started to look like. Like, iske pehle tak na, we were reading all kinds of curriculum and materials available online, trying to make the best possible program for our children and trying to learn from other people's experiences. And we were taking ourselves too seriously. And we were also attracting a lot of young people who were sports persons themselves and wanted to contribute to the world of sport without really understanding we're talking about using sport as a means for child development. And the biggest thing that we saw was, actually, there's this one incident from 2013 I've not been able to take, 2012 actually, I've not been able to take out of my head. It was my first month of working at Project Kale, and there was this village school, a rural school that we were working in. And every time we went there, the boys would run and come first, and they used to take the ball from us because they knew कि हम 10 minute पहले आते हैं, and we used to set up the ground. And this one time we saw a bunch of girls also run and come with them. Like, it happened after a very, very long time, and we were really excited about it. So we gave the ball to the girls, hoping that maybe things will be different. And by the end of it, end of the 5-10 minutes that we took to set up our ground, none of the girls had used the ball. जिसके हाथ में ball दिया था, she kept standing with it. And the boys were really angry that आपने हमें दिया होता तो कम से कम हम खेलते. And the whole thing about this conversation, it was like a 10-second conversation. I was there for that session. I asked that girl, why didn't you all play? Like, this was your chance to do something on your own. This कि volleyball तो हमने किसी के साथ, मतलब कोई टीचर ने खिलाया है या लड़कों को खेलते हुए देखा है. It's not something that I associate myself with. And yeah, so I think these kind of incidents pushed us from wanting to be a sports for development organization to a play for child development organization. And also, like I was saying previously, that we expanded our understanding of play. It wasn't just khelna kudna. It was also about being playful. It was also about the mindset of the facilitator who wanted to be fun, wanted to play some game, like what the internet is doing with us today. It is playing with us right now. So just that way, you go in with that mindset where you know कि आज कुछ मजा कराएंगे, even if that is about reading a story from a book. If you have the playful mindset, you can convert that session into a play-based session as well.
Thanks. I love that example because I can really relate to it, right? As a young girl, you're not really taught. I wasn't really taught to kind of go out in the field and play sport and stuff. So, but specifically on that, right? You said you expanded you expanded your notion of what constitutes play to beyond sport. So, can you give us some examples, like, what does it look like when it's not on a sports field, and what are the changes that you've seen happen through the course of your own work that have resulted from from some of your curriculum and some of the way in which you interact with the young kids?
So again, one of my favorite memories from about 6 or 7 years back, when we very purposefully made the shift from sports for development to play for child development, was we used a lot of handball sessions. Like we created teams to play the sport of handball informally. The moment we started expanding our understanding of what play could do, we started becoming really fun with the way we were using handball. So for example, iske pehle tak we had 2 teams, we had a set of rules ki ye sab karna hai, and then we're going to play a match, and depending on the time and the space, we would divide the number of teams that got to play actually. And so this one time, we asked children that we're going to play a set of 4 matches, and the first 2 matches will see all the children get a chance to play. The third and the fourth match, के लिए the children have to choose the best players from their teams. And that is all we said. Just choose your best players. We didn't say that the best players will get to play. So obviously the kids thought that best players will get to play. And all the teams chose their best players. And the weakest ones were left behind. And so then we switched it. You've chosen your best players. ठीक है, अब तुम लोग बाहर बैठो, बाकी बच्चे अंदर आओ. And that blew our children's minds कि ये तो गलत कर दिया आपने. Then we reminded them कि instruction में हमने बोला था कि best players को खेलने को मिलेगा. And just by doing that, we were able to have a lot of conversations around empathy and lots of questions around what does best player mean, and what does it happen, what does it mean to you if you win, and what does winning mean like in different contexts, and how can you lose graciously. So these kind of little twists that we started bringing into our mindset and into our language and into our practice, we saw we were able to identify more sparks of happiness, because the children who always thought they were weak and they're not going to play because हमेशा की तरह फिर से the weakest ones are out, and they knew कि हाँ ऐसा होगा. But the fact that they got to represent their team and उनके जीतने पे या हारने पे depend कर रहा था कि उनका टीम का क्या स्कोर रहेगा, that was such an empowering moment. And this is what we wanted to hold on to. We didn't just want to follow like just the sport itself. We just wanted to play around with it. What more can we do? And it actually encouraged us to question a lot of things. And we understood that language is such an important thing even while we are playing. Like there's this game जो कहीं पे चेन खेल बुलाते, कहीं पे उसको चोर पुलिस बुलाते. It's basically there's this one den and there are lots of children running in a space. And every time the denner attacks someone, they have to join the denner. Now there's a chain that is being formed. So in a lot of local versions of the game, there is one chor और बाकी बच्चे हैं या बाकी पुलिस है. But the whole concept of it that एक चोर जितने बच्चों को touch करेगा, वो चोर बनता जाएगा. And then you think of the negative implication of something like this, and you just switch that. एक बच्चा जो पुलिस है, or just a positive figure that you can think of, and everyone else is our children. जिनका लाइफ ये बच्चा टच कर रहा है, and that child gets attached with the positivity that this first child is sharing. So just by playing around with these words, we felt that we were able to create a bigger repository of games for ourselves, and it was also exciting for children to know that they knew our games. They knew कि जो करा रहे हैं ये हमें आता है, but आज कुछ अलग होगा. So there was this sense of familiarity, but there was also this excitement and curiosity to see कि आज अलग से क्या कराएंगे.
So how does this connect to having conversations about gender?
Okay, I'll give you another example. Again, one of my favorite things to do. So the sport of Kho-Kho is very, very popular across all the communities we work in. And of course, one way of going about is saying all the right things. That नहीं लड़की को कैप्टन बनाओ की, and नहीं एक लड़कियों का टीम होगा या फिर सिर्फ गर्ल्स रिप्रेजेंट करेंगे तुम्हारी टीम से, लड़कियों को मौका दो. So one way is just talking about that. The other way is that while we are playing the sport of Kho-Kho, at random, one of our facilitators will come and say, "अच्छा, तुम लोगों ने red पहना है, red वाले बाहर जाओ," and talk a little rudely, but not explain ourselves why. So they're out of the game, and then we have the funnest game possible. And of course these kids are feeling bad कि हमें निकाला क्यों. In fact खो-खो नहीं किसी भी गेम के साथ ये कर सकते हैं, which it just has to be super fun ताकि जिसको बाहर निकाला उसको बुरा लगे. And then we start after the game. So basically it's an experiential education concept where you create real life situations within your activity and then you have a reflective debriefing conversation. So in this reflective conversation, of course, these kids are always the most talkative ones that we ask to leave, so that no, they feel bad and they can question us. Because जो शांत वाले, they'll never question us. And then they ask कि आपने हमें निकाला क्यों, इतना मजा आ रहा था, हमने क्या किया है? And that is when we talk about discrimination. That how many of you decide who's going to be on your team based on gender, or maybe based on caste, or maybe based on color. So how did you feel about it? How did you feel when you were excluded? So then that is where we bring in this aspect of empathy. Like another similar thing that we do is, like again for Kho-Kho, एक round normally khela. In round 2, at random we'll select 4-5 pairs and we tie their feet together, like how we play the 3-legged race one. And so the second round is obviously difficult for the pairs whose legs have been tied up. And then in the reflective conversation, we talk about how did you feel when you were running for yourself, for your team, against how it was easy or difficult for you when you were tied down with another person. And then that helps us have this conversation on what happens when you don't allow your sisters to go to school, when you don't allow the women in your house to get an education, to have a career. Then you are the one who's carrying the the burden of this other person. But when both of you are getting equal opportunities, कम से कम equal access तुम्हारे घर वाले level से, it eases out the burden because everyone is contributing to looking out for the team. The team here is the family right now. So these kind of simple conversations through games, it just creates a more familiar sort of an impact, and we are evidently out of the gyan mode. Like there's no teacher trying to tell anyone कि ये सही है वो गलत है. Children are experiencing it for themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And anyone who has kids knows that you can't tell a kid what to do, right? It's not going to work.
Yeah.
So you mentioned family, right? So in these games, are you also including parents, because they have a massive influence on how children perceive gender? So when you play these games, I understand that you're playing with boys and girls, and but are you also playing? How are you involving the parents, or are you involving them?
So very purposefully, we have kept our interactions with our children alone. So even when we work in schools, we mostly work in low-income schools. We do invite the teachers, especially the teachers of the particular classes that we are engaging with, to join. And in certain partner institutions, they find value in our program, so they make it mandatory for their teachers to come and attend and observe our sessions and make a list of stuff we did to keep the children engaged without caning them. So these kind of engagements are encouraged by the school or the teachers. While working in communities, starting में of course लगता है कि हाँ 2 दिन खेलेंगे, photo लेंगे, चले जाएंगे, because that is how bad the image of an NGO is in our city. But once they see that we are being regular, and once they see that we are coming on the same time day after day, there is a lot more intention to engage with us. So instead of us reaching out to communities, we create this mahal where parents are reaching out to us. And through this, we've actually been able to have very constructive conversations with parents around, say, menstrual hygiene, and especially with mothers around safe sex. And I don't think that we were able to change a lot in their lives immediately, but for mothers to know that no bol sakte hain to your husband. And also to have these conversations where if you're not having a child, like it is not always the woman's fault. And you know how you could also ask your husband, you should also ask your husbands to get tested. So getting this new angle into their minds. So I think that has definitely been progress. Plus just recently today, one of our team members shared how in a slum community, just 3 weeks back, we were facilitating this activity, and a lot of mothers came in and they were so engaged and excited. Again, it was a sport of Kho-Kho. They started cheering from outside, giving instructions, ऐसे भागो उधर से पकड़ो. So we just stopped the game and we invited them over कि अब तो जाओ बच्चों को बोलो जाओ अपनी मम्मियों को लेके आओ जिनकी भी मम्मियां यहाँ पे खड़ी हैं. And the mothers came, बुरखा पहन के, साड़ी पहन के, दुपट्टा लेके, सिर ढक के, they came and they played. So it helps that we are not reaching out to them, and they are finding, the parents and the community is finding interest in our program and trying to ask us to engage with them. So that becomes really helpful.
That's incredible, and I really love how you're describing play as like as a door, and it allows it just like opening the door, and it creates, I think like you said, it creates that safe space, that non-judgmental zone to kind of have a conversation. That's great. I actually want to ask you, you've now been doing this for many years, and you spoke a little bit about moving from sports to moving, to a little bit broader than that, being playful. And I was curious to know, just over the years of doing this work, are there lessons that you have that you could share for other organizations that are working, on gender, changing norms, working with young kids, and that actually may even be useful for parents to know? Can you share any lessons that you had?
Yes. Number one, I think also very strong learning is the difference between calling in and calling out. And there needs to be this awareness amongst facilitators or adults who are in a space, like overseeing the space. So already there is a power structure. You as an adult in our Indian context are the one who's holding power. Then there are children who are not. And it is up to you that you see wrong behavior, bad behavior, and not say anything about it, or you humiliate the child and scar the child for the rest of their lives, where they become, or they want to become much more aggressive and go against you, or you can just identify what is happening there and use. So when you're working with the same set of children, you start understanding who benefits more by being spoken to in a public gathering and who would benefit more by talking to them in a one-on-one basis. So
Right.
Definitely calling out a bad behavior without humiliating the child and without really identifying the one person who's done it or a couple of children who've done it. We talk about that issue. And again, it's not about us saying कि ये गलत किया. We start with something like अभी कुछ हुआ, किसने देखा? एक चीज हुआ जो हमें गलत लग रहा है. So automatically children start speaking up. And when children are taking this space to talk about something that they felt was not right, it immediately builds a lot of understanding for the context. And it also does something amazing in terms of power distribution, that there is not an adult telling what is right or wrong. You as an individual have equal amount of power to say something that a peer is doing. So it really impacts the bystander effect if you really think of it, because you're encouraging children to take a stand. So calling in and calling out is definitely something. Then number two is language. So a lot of times we go in with this mindset that we know better than the children, and that impacts the language that we use. A lot of times we talk about ourselves in third person, जैसे हम Julius Caesar है, because we consider ourselves as this one person of power. दीदी ने बोला था ना, तो आपने ऐसा क्यों किया? So when you're talking like that, then you are assuming all roles of power in yourself. So if you are the one who's holding power, then how are you creating that space for a child to take that power back and make a change in their lives? Because if they don't have power in their own lives with their own actions, that means वो अपनी life में क्या change करेंगे? कुछ नहीं. So being aware of the language that we are using, and my favorite line for all my team members is ज्ञान mode में मत जाओ. Like, children get gyan from everyone and everywhere, be it from the paros wale uncle auntie to every day in school. There's always someone telling them what to do, and children have better judgment than we adults have. Like, we, I think, are much more corrupted with what is happening in the world. So trusting children, treating them as thinking individuals is definitely something that I found very useful as a facilitator, and as an organization also. I felt that we were more well received by our children when they figured that we are not here to tell them that they are wrong. We are here to talk about stuff and let them decide. करना है तो करो, नहीं करना है तो मत करो. Of course, there are some basic ground rules like no गाली गलौज, कोई मारामारी नहीं करेगा. Like those kind of basic stuff are there for the sanctity of the space. So recently this happened last month. We were doing this activity where again in a slum community, and there were a bunch of older boys who were not part of our program, and they came over. It was about children having to draw something, and then we were going to talk about diversity. And this one particular boy, and this was the first time we saw something like this happen in 7 years, came and drew a penis. And he definitely got a lot of appreciation from the older boys around, that हाँ तुमने teacher के space को challenge किया है and all. And it was really difficult to make that decision in that moment, but we immediately understood what was happening, and we did not make it about ourselves. That you did not offend me, you offended this space. What is this space for us? It is a learning space. So we spoke about the values that we wanted to bring into this space. So we also made it very clear that drawing a penis for fun is fine. But is this the space? So then that way we are able to be sex positive, and we are also able to bring this understanding of context into our children's minds instead of just blankly saying something is wrong or something is right. So you can speak a certain way, you can crack certain jokes when you are in your friend circle, but why would you want to carry that into a space which is shared by 10 other people for a very different purpose? Now then talking about respect of relationship, mutual stuff and all of that. And this boy, he took a couple of sessions off. Like we also wanted to make sure that he comes back only when he feels bad about what has happened. And he did. He came back after about 2 weeks, and till date he's the most, like, he's our go-to person in the community there. And for the whole reason that we did not humiliate him, we did not say he was wrong, we did not throw him out of the session. We just let him know that we will have him back only feels like he should apologize. Yeah, giving children that respect, and also talking about context-based right and wrong instead of blanket right and wrong. And I think the most important thing that we figured for ourselves as an organization, and would also be something that I would like to tell other organizations, is how do we define change? So we often try to design an evaluation process based on what suits the funder. And I think by doing that, we really restrict ourselves. Like we become like horses with blinkers because we're just trying to do that. And we were there. We were exactly there where we felt very frustrated that we could see change, but we couldn't quantify it, or we couldn't bring it down in a manner that sounded very appealing based on what we were talking. And over the years, we've just stopped doing that. In the last 5-6 years, we've not obsessed about numbers. We've not tried to say that so many girls or boys have become confident. We've just expanded our understanding of confidence. For a child, be it a girl or a boy, for their history in that community or in that group, they come and hold that space in a very apologetic manner. But if that child starts standing straight, the child is maintaining eye contact but hasn't spoke for that entire year, that is still change, because the child has stopped feeling bad about themselves. They're feeling confident in holding that space. If there's a child that abuses like 10 times in 30 minutes, that child is abused 5 times. That is change. And also how our programs like ours, which is leading behavior change, it is very difficult to see something in that exact program engagement time frame. So we've started identifying and talking to children a lot more about their personal spaces, like not really probing into their personal lives, but we've recently learned how this boy, he is the chota beta, ladla beta, the only one out of 5-6 siblings who goes to school. He has never served himself a single meal in all the 17-18 years that he has lived. It was only after his engagements and experiences and conversations with all of us, with our facilitators, with the team members, did he in 2020 he shared that बस 2-3 महीने पहले से मैंने खुद को खाना सर्व करना स्टार्ट किया है. And we could have never caught that kind of change. It is only after having these conversations, we've had brothers share that how the older one started feeling insecure because suddenly the chota wala became everyone's favorite because he had a better way of talking. So how he started following the chota bhai to see कि जाता कहाँ है कि ये बिल्कुल बदल गया है. And then he figured कि the only thing different is he is engaged to this play-based program. So he requested if he can come, and now he feels happy that he is also able to say sorry, please, thank you, and talk context appropriate तरीके से. So yeah, so expanding what change means, I think it's definitely something that we should all consider, not just try to be very strict with our frameworks.
Yeah, and I think especially in the space of normative change, right, and behavior, it's usually the subtle things that matter. Just expecting, and it's actually small changes that add up to big change, but then we tend to forget the small changes as well. So thanks so much, Angana, for taking the time. I've learned a lot, and I love this phrase, calling in versus calling out. I think it just, and it was great to hear from you. Experience at Project Kale in terms of just how to use play creatively to achieve so many different outcomes. So thanks so much for taking the time, and I look forward to learning more from you in future as well.
Thank you so much for having me over and letting me share about our work. We're very bad at talking about our work. so thank you for the space.
No, thanks so much, Angana.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.